Tokyo.
All right. We'll do a telegram. That would be great. What about structural reform? Speaking of telegrams, is that now back on the burner with the economy so hard hit by the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the three arrows of Abenomics' agenda was monetary easing and fiscal policy, check, check. Regulatory reforms is that third arrow. There was some early success. The womanomics and getting more women into the workplace, that saw some initial success. And all those ultra-low rates and bond buying drove a rally in stocks initially. It sent the yen lower. Companies reported record earnings. But you know what? Wages didn't go up enough to boost consumption, and that was a big part of this. Get people spending, and people have stuffed their yen underneath the mattress, and so they haven't had that kind of reform. So households and companies are in savings mode again, and with coronavirus the top priority and getting the economy going again, I think structural reform is on the proverbial back burner now.
All right, Stephen, thanks very much for joining us on that. Bloomberg's Stephen Engel, our lead North Asia correspondent on this developing story. Coming up, the rise and fall of Wirecard. We're going to look into what happens next with the German payments company. This is Bloomberg. An offer for the rest of the company as well. Credit Suisse plans to double its headcount in China over the next 5 years. The firm is accelerating its pursuit of wealthy clients in the nation, targeting a 100% increase in revenue there. Sources tell us Credit Suisse wants Asia to make up a quarter of its overall revenue, up from 17.5% now. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Now let's recap the timeline of the Wirecard scandal. Bloomberg's Danny Berger tracks the period from when the payment company entered Germany's benchmark DAX index up until the arrest of the company's CEO, Markus Braun, in June this year.
Wirecard was a German dream. Welcomed into its blue-chip DAX index, it gave hope to the country's beleaguered finance industry and showed it could do tech. But in less than 2 years, Wirecard was insolvent, its CEO under arrest. Celebrations of Wirecard entering the DAX were soon punctured. The Financial Times reports an executive in the Singapore office is suspected of forging contracts. Bearish bets pile up. German financial regulator BaFin bans shorts, a first for a single stock in Germany. 2 months later, the ban was lifted, but by the fall of 2019, more doubts over accounting practices had piled up. To calm investors, Wirecard hired KPMG for an independent audit. Shares jumped on the announcement. Come the final report, something is missing. Over $1 billion of revenue. The reason? Internal shortcomings. Wirecard CEO Markus Braun rejects reports of accounting irregularities. But by June, the company's defenses are starting to unravel. Prosecutors launch a criminal investigation into Braun, and police raid the company's office. Wirecard admits the missing $2.2 billion of assets probably doesn't exist, and the next day, Braun is arrested. Falling from darling to delinquent, Wirecard has caused scandal back in Germany. With the political repercussions still playing out, regulator BaFin is accused of being asleep on the job. Finance Minister Olaf Scholz has called the scandal a wake-up call and pushed for tougher regulation. But with questions continuing about the government's oversight, Wirecard could still prove to be a political nightmare for Berlin.
And that was Bloomberg's Danny Berger on the rise and fall of Wirecard. Now, the collapse has kicked off a scramble for the fintech company's units. Wirecard UK is going to sell its card technology, associated assets, and transfer client relationships to Railsbank technology. And over here in Europe, Deutsche Bank has submitted a bid for some of Wirecard's German assets. Joining us now to talk about this is Bloomberg's tech reporter out of Berlin, Sarah Syed. Sarah, what do we know about, I had never heard of Railsbank until this morning. What do we know about the Railsbank deal?
Good morning, Matt. So the administrator is trying to move quite quickly in terms of offloading some of the Wirecard assets. So it's been quite successful in doing that with the UK business. It's already offloaded part of its Brazilian business as well. So with regard to the Railsbank deal, Wirecard will sell its card technology and some associated assets in the UK, and also transfer client relationships and certain employees to the Railsbank business. You also have the FCA step in and say that Wirecard is entering a process to close its e-money and payment services business in the country completely, and that they're working closely with Wirecard through this process to ensure that customers are treated fairly.
What's the latest in terms of, so that's the UK story, and we're going to talk to the CEO of Railsbank Technology a little bit later on in the program. What's the latest in terms of the German assets here for Wirecard?
So Bloomberg wrote a story at the tail end of last week saying that Deutsche Bank has submitted a bid for some of Wirecard's German assets. But the administrator, as I said earlier, has been working quite speedily and is also, not keen to sell the businesses for cheap, has said that the bid submitted by Deutsche Bank for some of the assets was considered too low. So the offer from Germany's largest lender for Wirecard Bank and some related companies was one of several. And we understand that the non-binding bids were well below 100 million euros, which is what the Wirecard administrator sees as a minimum to proceed with a sale rather than a liquidation.
Interesting stuff. All right, so as the Bundestag's Finance Committee starts to hold sessions today on the disgraced payments company. What should we be watching out for?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of kind of nervous people in the political realm today. There's a bit of a blame game, I guess, if you like, on the collapse of Wirecard. And, you know, what will come into question is why authorities didn't take a harder look at the payments company before it became, I guess, the country's kind of biggest accounting scandal in living memory. So German lawmakers will be questioning one of Chancellor Angela Merkel's top advisor. That will happen today before we see a grilling, I guess, of the industry watchdogs, including BaFin. So if the hearings do go badly, Parliament could potentially start a deeper investigation. And this is a bad time as the country prepares for the post-Merkel era and an election next year.
All right, Sarah, thanks very much for joining us. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more from you on this story. Sarah Said there, our Berlin tech reporter. Now, coming up, stocks to watch, including Nestle today. It's agreed to buy an allergy treatment developer, Aimmune Therapeutics, for $2.6 billion. More on that next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Markets. This is the European Open. 10 minutes to go, and we're looking at some possibly big movers today. Joining us to discuss more is Anne-Marie Jordan. She's got a number of companies to look at. One of them is, one of the most heavily weighted companies on the stock 600, Nestle, right?
Yes, certainly. And of course, we're going to be looking at the moves on the continent today, because we should remember today's a bank holiday here in the UK. So the FTSE 100 is shut. But Nestle this morning out with some news that they are taking over Aimmune Therapeutics. Now, they were keen to clearly get in on it because they're paying 174% premium to the closing price on Friday. So Aimmune, Matt, has this drug called Palforzia, and it's the only treatment that's approved by the FDA that can help reduce the frequency and severity of those with peanut allergies, especially in children and teenagers. And this just goes to show what Nestle has been trying to do, and that is really bolster the science arm of the company as they see softer demand in their consumer goods products like U.S. Confectionery operations. So this deal inks that trajectory that they've been on, which is really starting to put more money into that science arm.
Yeah, as smart as because the kids these days are all developing these new allergies like peanut allergies, which when I was a kid, peanut butter is literally what every kid ate for lunch. And now, I guess, a new generation of more allergic people. It's Ammune, by the way, just Ammune is the way that company is pronounced. Philips, what's the story with Philips?
I'm a huge peanut butter fan as well. So Philips this morning, this has everything to do with that pulled ventilator contract out of the U.S. So Philips says they see modest full-year comparable sales growth, and they cut their margin outlook to around the levels last year. And this comes as that pulled contract from the United States. It won't be supplying the remaining 30,700 ventilators to the Strategic National Stockpile. It has received that notice from the U.S. in a partial termination of that contract.